Millionaire marries a fat black woman to upset his racist ex-wife. Everyone laughed. Months later, she surprised everyone. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Julian Hartley stood in front of his office window, holding a glass of whiskey and staring at the New York skyline. The invitation to Charlotte's first wedding anniversary lay crumpled on his desk. His ex-wife had made sure it reached him, knowing it would hurt. The society pages still talked about their divorce from last year, how Charlotte had dragged his name through the mud, spreading rumors about his inadequacies and mocking his love life in front of their social circle. "Mr. Hartley?" His assistant Sarah poked her head in. "Your 3 o'clock appointment is here, Tamara Price from Sweet Success Bakery." Julian straightened his tie and put down the glass. He'd been following Tamara's business for months. Her little bakery in Brooklyn had gotten write-ups in food magazines for its unique flavors, but she was struggling to expand. It was perfect timing. Tamara walked in with confidence that surprised him. She was a plus-sized black woman, wearing a bright yellow dress that complemented her dark skin, her hair in elegant braids. She carried herself like she owned the room, despite being in one of Manhattan's most expensive office buildings. "Mr. Hartley," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for considering an investment in my bakery. Please call me Julian." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I've tried your maple bacon cupcakes. They're extraordinary. But that's not why I'm here, is it?" Tamara raised an eyebrow. "Your assistant mentioned something about an unusual business proposition." Julian smiled. Tamara was sharp. He liked that. "I'll be direct," he said, sitting down. "I want to offer you a deal. I'll invest $2 million in your bakery, help you expand to multiple locations, and provide business connections that will make Sweet Success a household name." Tamara's eyes widened, but she kept her composure. "And what do you want in return? Because we both know this isn't just about cupcakes." Julian pushed Charlotte's invitation across the desk. "I want you to marry me." Tamara laughed, then realized he wasn't joking. "Excuse me. A marriage of convenience," Julian explained. "My ex-wife Charlotte is throwing a big anniversary party next month. She's been spreading rumors about me since our divorce, making me look like a fool in front of everyone who matters in this city. And you want to show up with a wife who'll make her uncomfortable," Tamara said flatly. "A big black woman who runs a bakery instead of a country club membership. You're successful, intelligent, and beautiful in your own right," Julian said. "Charlotte and her stuck-up friends won't know how to handle you. Plus, you get the investment you need to make your business dreams come true." Tamara stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. "So I'm supposed to be your revenge weapon, your trophy to wave in their faces?" "No," Julian said quickly. "You'd be my partner, equal say in how we handle public appearances. The marriage would be in name only, with a clear prenup protecting both of us. After a year, we divorce amicably and you keep the business investment." "This is crazy," Tamara muttered, but she sat back down. "Why me?" "Because you're everything Charlotte isn't," Julian admitted. "Real, talented, someone who built something from nothing instead of living off daddy's money. And yes, because you'll make her and her racist friends uncomfortable just by existing in their world." Tamara was quiet for a long moment. $2 million isn't enough. I want $3 million full creative control of my business and your contacts in the restaurant industry." Julian blinked. "You're negotiating." "I'm a businesswoman, Mr. Hartley. If I'm going to sell myself into a fake marriage, I'm getting full value." She leaned forward. "And I want it in writing that this is a business arrangement. No funny business, no real romance, no expectations beyond public appearances." Julian found himself smiling. "You drive a hard bargain, Ms. Price." "Call me Tamara," she said. "If we're going to be married, we should be on a first-name basis." They hammered out the details over the next hour. Julian's lawyers would draw up both the business investment papers and a prenuptial agreement. They would have a small private ceremony next week, giving them time to prepare for Charlotte's party. As Tamara stood to leave, Julian caught a hint of vanilla and cinnamon from her skin, baker's perfume. "One more thing," she said at the door. "I won't let you or anyone else make me feel ashamed of who I am. I'll play the loving wife in public, but if you ever try to change me or control me, the deal's off." "Understood." Julian nodded, impressed despite himself. "Understood." After she left, he looked at Charlotte's invitation again and smiled. His ex-wife had no idea what was coming. Over the next week, Julian's plan came together. The marriage license was obtained quietly, the prenup signed, and the business investment arranged. They had a simple ceremony at City Hall, with only Julian's lawyer and Tamara's sister Kenya as witnesses. Tamara wore a cream-colored business suit, instead of a wedding dress. When Julian slipped the ring on her finger, a tasteful diamond that wouldn't interfere with her baking, she kept her face neutral, professional. This was business, nothing more. But as they posed for the required photos, Julian found himself noticing little things. The way Tamara's eyes crinkled when she gave a genuine smile instead of a posed one. The confident way she handled his lawyer's condescending attitude. The slight lavender scent of her hair when she stood close for pictures. "Ready for this?" he asked as they left City Hall. "I was born ready," Tamara said. "But are your friends ready for me? Because I don't do meek and quiet." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Julian replied. Neither of them realized that their carefully planned business arrangement was about to become much more complicated than either had bargained for. The wheels were in motion, and there was no turning back now. That night, alone in her apartment above her bakery, Tamara stared at the wedding ring on her finger. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered to her empty kitchen. But when she thought about what she could do with $3 million, the new locations she could open, the people she could hire, the dreams she could finally achieve, she knew she'd made the right choice. Across town in his penthouse, Julian looked at his phone. Charlotte had already heard about his sudden marriage, probably from someone at City Hall. She'd left 3 angry voicemails demanding an explanation. He smiled and deleted them without listening. Let her wonder. Let her worry. In 1 month, at her precious anniversary party, she'd get all the explanation she needed. The game was on. The morning of Charlotte's anniversary party arrived bright and clear. Tamara stood in front of the mirror in Julian's penthouse guest room, where she'd moved her things for appearance's sake. She smoothed down her red designer dress, a size 16 that hugged her curves perfectly. Julian had offered to buy her something new, but she'd insisted on wearing her own clothes. "You look beautiful," Kenya, her sister, said from the doorway. "But are you sure about this? These rich people can be cruel." "Let them try," Tamara replied, adjusting her gold earrings. "I've dealt with worse running my bakery in Brooklyn. You wouldn't believe how many customers assume I can't be the owner because of how I look." Julian knocked on the doorframe, already dressed in his tuxedo. He stopped short when he saw Tamara. The red dress made her dark skin glow, and she'd done something spectacular with her hair, forming her braids into an elegant updo. "Well," Tamara asked, turning around, "will I scandalize your ex-wife's fancy friends?" "You'll do more than that," Julian said softly. "You'll outshine them all." Kenya rolled her eyes. "I'm heading out. Some of us have real work to do." She hugged her sister. "Call me if you need backup. I can be there in 30 minutes with a rolling pin." After Kenya left, Julian and Tamara went over their story one last time. They'd met at a charity event 6 months ago, kept their relationship quiet during the divorce cooling-off period, and had a whirlwind romance leading to a private wedding. "Remember," Julian said as they rode the elevator down to his waiting car, "Charlotte will try to provoke you. She's an expert at making subtle digs that sound polite on the surface." "Honey," Tamara patted his arm, already in character as the devoted wife, "I grew up with 3 sisters and worked retail through college. I can handle passive-aggressive better than anyone." The party was being held at the Preston Hotel's grand ballroom. As their car pulled up, photographers started snapping pictures. The mysterious new Mrs. Hartley was big news in New York society circles. Julian helped Tamara out of the car, keeping his hand on the small of her back. They'd practiced looking natural together, and it showed. As they walked the gauntlet of reporters, Tamara handled their questions with easy charm. "Yes, it was a whirlwind romance," she said, smiling up at Julian. "When you know, you know." Inside the ballroom, conversations stuttered to a halt as they made their entrance. Charlotte, wearing a skin-tight white gown that probably cost more than Tamara's first bakery, stopped mid-laugh with her husband James. "Julian?" she said, her voice dripping honey-coated venom. "What a surprise, I wasn't sure you'd come." "Wouldn't miss it," Julian replied smoothly. "Charlotte, James, I'd like you to meet my wife, Tamara." Charlotte's eyes widened as she took in Tamara's appearance. "How unexpected. I didn't even know you were dating anyone." "Some of us prefer privacy," Tamara said sweetly, "especially after such a public divorce. But I'm sure you understand all about privacy, given how many interviews you did about Julian's, what did you call them, inadequacies?" Charlotte's face flushed red. Before she could respond, James steered her away to greet other guests. "Round 1 to you," Julian whispered, grabbing champagne from a passing waiter. "Oh, honey, I'm just getting started," Tamara replied through her smile. Throughout the evening, they worked the room like pros. Julian introduced Tamara to all the right people, and she charmed them despite their initial shock. She talked business with the men, fashion with the women, and had everyone laughing at her stories about crazy customer requests at her bakery. But not everyone was won over. Charlotte had gathered her closest friends, all blonde, all thin, all dripping with old money, and they huddled in corners, whispering and pointing. Every time Tamara passed their group, she caught snippets of their comments. Must be pregnant, why else would he? Probably after his money. Can you imagine her at the country club? Tamara kept her head high, but Julian could see the tension in her shoulders. During a quiet moment, he pulled her onto the dance floor, holding her close as a slow song played. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I knew they'd be awful, but..." "Don't apologize," Tamara cut him off. "I knew what I was signing up for." She looked up at him, determination in her eyes. "Besides, I'm having fun watching Charlotte turn different shades of purple every time someone compliments me." As they danced, Julian found himself noticing more little things about his fake wife, the way she fit perfectly in his arms despite their height difference, the subtle scent of vanilla that always surrounded her, the warmth of her hand in his. The moment was broken by Charlotte's voice, loud enough to carry. "Well, I suppose some men just lower their standards after divorce. Midlife crisis and all that." Tamara stiffened in Julian's arms. Then, to his surprise, she threw back her head and laughed. The rich, genuine sound carried across the ballroom, drawing attention. "Oh, bless your heart," Tamara said, turning to face Charlotte. "You really can't stand it, can you, that Julian found happiness with someone who doesn't fit your narrow little view of the world?" Charlotte's face turned ugly. "How dare you speak to me like that, you fat—" "Careful," Tamara cut her off. "You wouldn't want to show everyone your true colors, would you? All that careful breeding, all those fancy finishing schools, and yet you're still just a mean girl who peaked in high school." The ballroom had gone silent. Charlotte looked around, realizing all eyes were on her. With a huff, she stormed off, leaving her husband James standing awkwardly alone. "I think that's our cue to leave," Julian said, fighting back a grin. As they waited for their car, Tamara's hands were shaking. Julian realized the confrontation had affected her more than she'd let on. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. "I meant every word," she replied. "Women like her. They've looked down on women like me our whole lives. But I'm done shrinking myself to make other people comfortable." In the car ride home, they were quiet, processing the evening. Julian kept stealing glances at Tamara, seeing her in a new light. She'd stood up to Charlotte in a way no one ever had before. Back at the penthouse, Tamara kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. "Well, mission accomplished. We gave them something to gossip about for months." "Stay for a nightcap?" Julian offered. Tamara shook her head. "I have to be at the bakery at 5 a.m. Some of us still have real jobs, remember?" But she hesitated at her door, looking back at him. "Thank you, though, for not stepping in when Charlotte attacked me, for letting me fight my own battles." "I had a feeling you could handle yourself," Julian replied. They shared a look that lasted a moment too long. Then Tamara cleared her throat and went into her room, closing the door firmly behind her. Julian stood in the hallway, staring at her closed door. The evening had gone exactly according to plan, so why did he feel so unsettled? In her room, Tamara leaned against the door, her heart racing. This was just business, she reminded herself, just a deal. She couldn't afford to forget that, no matter how good Julian had felt during their dance, no matter how he'd looked at her just now. But as she got ready for bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that their carefully planned arrangement was starting to shift into something neither of them had bargained for. The morning after Charlotte's party, Tamara was up before dawn, kneading dough in her bakery kitchen. The repetitive motion helped clear her head. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. Apparently, someone had recorded her confrontation with Charlotte, and the video was making rounds in New York's social circles. "Girl, you're famous." Kenya burst through the back door, waving her phone. "Have you seen this? You're trending on Twitter." "I'm what?" Tamara wiped her hands on her apron. "It can't be that big a deal." "Are you kidding? Chef serves entitled socialite just desserts," is the headline on page 6. Kenya hopped onto a clean counter, ignoring her sister's disapproving look. "And that's not all. The waiting list for your catering services is exploding. Seems like all those rich ladies want to prove they're not like Charlotte by hiring the new Mrs. Hartley's bakery." Tamara froze in the middle of scoring a loaf of bread. She hadn't thought about how her fake marriage might affect her business. Before she could respond, Julian walked in through the back door carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Your security system is terrible," he said by way of greeting. "We need to upgrade it now that you're in the spotlight." "Good morning to you too, husband," Tamara said dryly, taking one of the coffees. "Don't you have an empire to run?" Actually, that's why I'm here. Julian looked at Kenya. Could we have a minute? Kenya grinned. Say no more. I'll be up front, handling the morning rush that's already forming thanks to your newfound fame, sis. Once they were alone, Julian pulled out his phone. The video of last night has caused quite a stir. 3 different morning shows want to interview us, and, he hesitated, Charlotte's trying to do damage control. She's claiming you attacked her unprovoked. Of course she is, Tamara sighed, putting down her coffee. Look, I'm sorry if I went too far. I know the plan wasn't to make a scene. Are you kidding? It was perfect. Julian stepped closer, his eyes bright with excitement. Everyone's talking about how Charlotte showed her true colors. My phone's been ringing all morning with people suddenly wanting to do business with me again. And your bakery's about to explode with new customers. Tamara turned back to her bread, trying to hide her smile. Well, I guess the plan's working then. Which is why we need to strike while the iron's hot. Julian leaned against the counter, watching her work. I've set up meetings with real estate agents. We need to find the perfect locations for your expansion before the buzz dies down. Hold on, Tamara put down her bread knife. I haven't even finished the paperwork for the investment yet. Already taken care of. My lawyers worked through the night. He pulled out a thick envelope. Everything's ready. All you need to do is sign. Tamara stared at the envelope, then at Julian. He was watching her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. Why are you really here this early? Julian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was starting to recognize as a sign of nervousness. I couldn't sleep last night. Kept thinking about everything we could do with this momentum. Your talent, my business connections. We could build something amazing. We? Tamara raised an eyebrow. I thought this was just about getting back at Charlotte. It was. It is. Julian stepped closer, and Tamara caught a whiff of his expensive cologne mixed with the coffee on his breath. But why can't it be both? You're brilliant with food. I'm good with business. Together. The kitchen door swung open and Kenya stuck her head in. Sorry to interrupt the marriage meeting, but there's a reporter from Good Morning America outside. Says she wants to book you both for tomorrow's show. Tamara and Julian jumped apart, though they hadn't realized how close they'd gotten. Tell her we'll think about it, Julian said smoothly. After Kenya left, an awkward silence fell in the kitchen. Tamara busied herself with her bread, while Julian pretended to check his phone. Fine, Tamara said finally. Show me the real estate listings, but I have conditions. Julian looked up, grinning. Name them. I want a teaching kitchen in each new location, for community classes. Tamara met his eyes. Where I grew up, nobody taught kids about nutrition or cooking. They just expected us to figure it out. I want to change that. Julian's grin softened into something more genuine. Done. What else? For the next hour, they sat in Tamara's tiny office, going over plans. Julian had already researched potential locations in Brooklyn, Queens, and even one in Manhattan. Tamara was impressed despite herself. He'd clearly done his homework about which neighborhoods would work best. As they worked, their shoulders kept brushing. Every time it happened, Tamara felt a little jolt of awareness. She told herself it was just because she wasn't used to having someone in her space. Her tiny office barely fit 2 chairs. Around 9, Kenya brought them fresh croissants and more coffee. She raised her eyebrows at how close they were sitting, but didn't comment. The reporter's still outside, she said instead. And now there's a guy from the Times, too. Something about a feature on New York's most intriguing power couple. Julian looked at Tamara. It's your call. We don't have to do any interviews. Tamara thought about it. The practical side of her knew this kind of publicity could launch her business to the next level. But there was something else too, a desire to show everyone that she and Julian weren't just a scandal or a revenge plot. Let's do it, she said, but on our terms. They can interview us here in my kitchen. Let them see where I actually work. Julian's face lit up. Perfect. It'll show that you're not just arm candy. You're a successful businesswoman in your own right. Was anyone really thinking I was arm candy? Tamara gestured to herself with a laugh. Julian's expression turned serious. You'd be surprised how many men have already asked me if I'm crazy for settling. Their wives might pretend to be progressive in public, but in private, let me guess, they're all friends with Charlotte. Some of them. Others are just... Julian trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Racist. Fatphobic. Come on, Julian, you can say it. Tamara stood up, needing some distance. It's not like I don't deal with it every day. Julian caught her arm before she could leave. Hey, look at me. Tamara turned, ready for the usual awkward attempts at sympathy she got from well-meaning white people. Instead, she found Julian looking at her with something like anger. Those people? They're the ones settling for boring, safe lives with boring, safe partners who look and think exactly like them. His hand was warm on her arm. You're extraordinary, Tamara. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The tiny office felt even smaller. Tamara could see flecks of gold in Julian's green eyes, could feel the strength in his hand where it gripped her arm. Then someone dropped a pan in the kitchen, making them both jump. Julian let go of her arm like it had burned him. I should go, he said quickly. I have meetings, but I'll have my assistant set up the interviews for tomorrow. Right, meetings, of course. Tamara smoothed down her apron. I'll review those contracts tonight. Julian paused at the door. About what I said, I meant it. You are extraordinary. Before Tamara could respond, he was gone. She sat heavily in her chair, her heart racing. This is bad, she muttered to herself. This is very, very bad. Because for a moment there, she'd wanted to kiss him. And that wasn't part of their deal at all. Out in the main bakery, Julian was having similar thoughts. He'd come here this morning full of business plans and publicity ideas. Instead, he'd found himself mesmerized by the way Tamara's hands moved through bread dough, by the passion in her voice when she talked about teaching kids to cook, by the way she filled her tiny office with her presence. Get it together, he told himself as he got into his car. It's just business, nothing more. But even as he said it, he knew he was lying to himself, because nothing about Tamara Price felt like just business anymore. The Good Morning America interview changed everything. Tamara and Julian sat together on her bakery's counter, sharing stories about their whirlwind romance while the cameras rolled. The host was particularly interested in how they met. Well, Julian said, taking Tamara's hand naturally, I tried her maple bacon cupcakes at a charity event. One bite, and I knew I had to meet the genius behind them. He was so persistent, Tamara added, the practiced lie coming easily now. Kept ordering special deliveries to his office until I finally agreed to have coffee with him. And the rest is history, the host gushed. But tell us, Tamara, what's it like entering New York's high society, especially after that incident at the Preston Hotel? Tamara felt Julian's hand tighten on hers. You know what? It's been eye-opening. Some people have been surprisingly welcoming. Others, she shrugged, well, let's just say they're still adjusting to seeing someone who looks like me at their fancy parties. But you don't seem bothered by it. Why should I be? I own a successful business that I built from nothing. I have a husband who appreciates me exactly as I am. She looked at Julian, and for a moment, the emotion in her voice was real. I don't need approval from people who judge others based on their size or skin color. The interview aired the next morning, and the response was overwhelming. Orders flooded into Sweet Success Bakery. Society wives who'd snubbed Tamara at Charlotte's party now called asking to book her for their events. Julian's phone rang constantly with business opportunities. We're a hit, he announced, walking into Tamara's new office at their first expansion location in Brooklyn Heights. The space was under renovation, but Tamara had insisted on setting up her desk early. The Times wants to do a full profile, and 3 different women's magazines want you for their cover. Tamara looked up from her laptop, frowning. I'm not sure about all this publicity. It feels like we're taking the lie too far. What lie? Julian sat on the edge of her desk. Everything you said in that interview was true. You did build this business from nothing. And I do, he paused, then continued more quietly, I do appreciate you exactly as you are. Their eyes met, and that now familiar tension filled the air. Before either could speak, Kenya burst in. Tamara, you need to see this. She thrust her phone at them. On the screen was a social media post from Charlotte, complete with old photos of Julian with various skinny white socialites. Just remembering the good old days, the caption read, when some people had standards. Money really can't buy class, can it? That witch, Kenya spat. Want me to go mess up her highlights? I know her salon. But Tamara was looking at Julian, who had gone very still. The photos showed him at various parties and events, always with women who looked exactly like Charlotte. In every shot, he seemed to be playing a part, the wealthy playboy with his trophy girlfriend. Julian? Tamara's voice was quiet. He wouldn't meet her eyes. It was a different time, before the divorce. I was different. Were you? Tamara stood up. Or is this just a different kind of trophy wife situation? Instead of showing off the blonde socialite, you're showing off the fat black woman who makes Charlotte uncomfortable. Tamara, no. I need some air. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Kenya, handle the contractors if they show up. Julian tried to follow her, but Kenya blocked his path. Let her go. She needs time to think. She's got it all wrong, Julian insisted. Those photos, that's not who I am anymore. Kenya crossed her arms. Then why did you really marry my sister? And don't give me that business arrangement speech. I've seen how you look at her. Julian ran a hand through his hair in frustration. It started as business, but now what? Now I don't know what it is. He sank into Tamara's chair. Every time I think I have it figured out, she surprises me. She's not impressed by my money or my connections. She challenges me, makes me laugh, makes me think. Sounds like you're falling for her, Kenya observed. That wasn't part of the deal. Maybe that's the problem. Kenya headed for the door. Maybe you both need to stop thinking about the deal and start thinking about what you really want. Meanwhile, Tamara had walked to the nearby park, finding a bench away from the crowds. Her phone kept buzzing. More interview requests, more order inquiries, more people wanting a piece of New York's newest power couple. She thought about the photos Charlotte had posted. Julian looked so comfortable in that world of wealth and privilege. Was she just another way for him to prove something? To show how evolved and progressive he was? But then she remembered small moments. The way he brought her coffee every morning, remembering exactly how she liked it. How he listened intently when she talked about her dreams for the bakery. The pride in his voice when he introduced her to business associates as a successful entrepreneur. Mrs. Hartley? A woman's voice interrupted her thoughts. Tamara looked up to see one of Charlotte's friends from the party, Amanda or Allison or something with an A. I just wanted to say, the woman hesitated. You were right at the party. About Charlotte. About all of us, really. We've been awful and I'm sorry. Tamara blinked in surprise. Thank you, that's unexpected. It's just seeing you and Julian together. The way he looks at you. The woman smiled sadly. None of our husbands look at us like that anymore. Maybe they never did. We were all just matching accessories. As the woman walked away, Tamara felt her anger start to fade. Had she overreacted to those photos? Julian wasn't the same person he'd been then. She'd seen that for herself, in 100 small ways. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Julian. Please come back, we need to talk. Tamara stared at the message for a long moment. They did need to talk. About the photos, about the publicity, about the way things were changing between them, about how this fake marriage was starting to feel very real. But as she stood to head back to the office, another text came through. This one was from an unknown number, but she knew immediately who it was from. Enjoy your moment in the spotlight, Charlotte's message read. But remember, men like Julian don't change, they just find new ways to prove their power. Wonder what he'll collect next when he's done with you. Tamara's hands shook as she deleted the message. She wanted to believe Charlotte was wrong, but as she walked back to the office, doubt crept in. What if this whole thing, the investment, the marriage, even the growing attraction between them, was just another game to Julian? She found him waiting in her office, looking worried. Tamara, about those photos? It's fine, she cut him off. It was a long time ago. We both have pasts. No, it's not fine. He stepped closer. I need you to understand. Those photos, that life, it wasn't real. It was all for show. But this, don't. Tamara held up a hand. Please don't say whatever you're about to say. We had a deal, remember? This is business, nothing more. Julian's face fell, but he nodded. Right, business. He straightened his tie. I have meetings all afternoon. Will you be okay handling the contractors? Of course, I ran this business long before you came along. As soon as he left, Tamara sank into her chair. She'd done the right thing, hadn't she? Keeping things professional, sticking to the deal. So why did she feel like she'd just made a terrible mistake? In his car, Julian loosened his tie, feeling like he couldn't breathe. He'd been about to tell her everything, how his feelings had changed, how she'd changed him, but she'd stopped him. Maybe she didn't feel the same way. Maybe for her it really was just business. His phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte. She'll never fit in our world, Julian. You know that. When you're ready to come back to reality, call me. Julian deleted the message without responding. Charlotte was wrong about one thing. He didn't want Tamara to fit into that world. She was better than that world. Better than him, probably. But as his driver headed toward his office, Julian made a decision. He wasn't giving up. Somehow he had to prove to Tamara that this wasn't a game, that she wasn't just another trophy or power play. He just had no idea how to do it. The grand opening of Sweet Success Bakery's Brooklyn Heights location was bigger than anyone expected. A line stretched around the block, with people eager to try the famous maple bacon cupcakes and meet the woman everyone was talking about. Tamara stood behind the counter in her new chef's coat, the name Sweet Success embroidered in gold thread. She'd been up since 3 a.m. making sure everything was perfect. Julian had offered to hire extra staff, but she insisted on being hands-on for the opening. "You're going to work yourself to death," Kenya said, bringing her sister a much-needed cup of coffee. "We have plenty of help. Take a break." "I can't." Tamara checked the display cases again. "Everything has to be perfect. The food critics from the Times and the Post are coming and you're avoiding Julian," Kenya finished. "He's outside talking to reporters, by the way." "Want me to tell him you're busy?" Tamara sighed. Things had been awkward between them since their almost conversation in her office last week. They still played the happy couple for the cameras, but in private, they barely spoke beyond business matters. "Mrs. Hartley," one of the new employees called from the kitchen, "the wedding cake consultation is here early." "Wedding cake?" Kenya raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you do wedding cakes?" "Since Julian suggested we expand into high-end catering." Tamara straightened her coat. "And don't give me that look. It's good business." The consultation was with a young couple, clearly nervous about being there. The bride kept looking around like she expected to be kicked out. "We know you probably only take big society weddings now," the bride said quickly, "but we've been following your story and, well, you give us hope." "A woman who isn't afraid to be herself, who built something amazing." Tamara felt her throat tighten. "Tell me about your dream cake." As the couple described their plans, a small wedding, family recipes, a celebration of their mixed heritage, Tamara found herself getting emotional. These were her kind of people. This was why she'd started baking in the first place. "We can't afford much," the groom admitted. "We've been saving, but let me worry about the cost," Tamara said. "You just tell me exactly what you want." After they left, Tamara went to her office to sketch out some cake designs. She found Julian waiting there, looking through the day's press coverage. "The Times loved your new chocolate lavender tart," he said without looking up. "And the Post called you a breath of fresh air in New York's stuffy culinary scene." "Julian, Charlotte's been calling my lawyers," he continued, threatening to expose our arrangement. "She claims she has proof." Tamara sat heavily in her chair. "Can she?" "No, the marriage is legal, the business partnership is solid." He finally looked at her. "But she's desperate. She might start making up stories." "Let her." Tamara pulled out her sketchbook. "I have work to do." Julian didn't move. "I saw you with that couple, the wedding consultation." So you were different with them. Relaxed? Happy?" He leaned forward. "Like you used to be with me before." "Before what? Before I saw those photos? Before I realized I'm just another way for you to prove something to your ex-wife? Is that really what you think?" Julian stood up, anger flashing in his eyes. "After everything we've built together?" "We haven't built anything together," Tamara shot back. "You invested in my business. I'm playing the role of your wife. That's the deal." "The deal?" Julian laughed bitterly. "Right. Because everything has to be a business transaction with you. Heaven forbid you actually let someone care about you." "Care about me?" Tamara stood too, her voice rising. "You don't care about me. You care about what I represent. The perfect revenge against Charlotte and her racist friends." "You're wrong." Julian stepped closer, his voice dropping low. "You're so wrong, Tamara. If you'd just let me—" A knock at the door interrupted them. Kenya stuck her head in. "Sorry, but there's a situation out front. Some of Charlotte's friends are here making a scene." Tamara pushed past Julian, heading for the main shop. She found 3 women, all from Charlotte's inner circle, loudly complaining about their orders. "These cupcakes are stale," one declared, though she hadn't taken a bite. "And the service is terrible," another added. "But I suppose that's what happens when you let certain people above their station." The crowd of customers had gone quiet, watching. Phones were out, recording. Tamara knew this would be all over social media within hours. "Ladies," she said calmly, "if you're unhappy with your purchases, I'm happy to refund your money." "Oh, we don't want a refund," the third woman smiled nastily. "We want everyone to know what a fraud you are, playing at being Julian Hartley's wife, pretending you belong in our world." "She belongs wherever she wants to be," a voice called from the crowd. It was the bride from the wedding consultation. "And she's 10 times the lady you'll ever be." Other customers joined in, defending Tamara. Charlotte's friends, realizing they'd miscalculated, retreated in embarrassment. Later, after the shop closed, Tamara sat in her office looking at the sales figures. Despite, or maybe because of, the scene, they'd had a record-breaking day. "You should be celebrating," Julian said from the doorway. He held up a bottle of champagne. "The Times article is already bringing in calls about franchising opportunities." "Is that all you think about? Business opportunities?" Julian set the bottle down with a thud. "No, Tamara, it's not. I think about you. All the time. I think about how brave you are, how brilliant, how beautiful. Don't. Tamara stood up. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Why not? Because it's not in the contract? Because it's not part of our deal? He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. What if I don't want to stick to the deal anymore? Then you should have thought of that before you married me for revenge. The words hung between them like a physical thing. Julian stepped back like she'd slapped him. You're right, he said quietly. I did marry you for revenge. It was selfish and manipulative, and you deserve better. He turned to leave, then stopped. But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you, and that's the most real thing that's ever happened to me. He walked out before Tamara could respond. She sank into her chair, her hands shaking. Kenya found her there an hour later, staring at nothing. You okay, sis? Julian just told me he loves me. Kenya sat down. And I didn't say anything back. Tamara looked at her sister, tears in her eyes. Because if I admit I love him too, it makes this whole thing real. And real things can break your heart. Hearts can break either way, Kenya said softly. At least, if you're honest about your feelings, you're breaking them for something true. Outside the bakery, Julian sat in his car, not ready to go home to their empty penthouse. His phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte. Ready to end this charade yet? He typed back 2 words. Go away. Because even if Tamara never loved him back, even if this whole thing had started as a revenge plot, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't pretending anymore, and he'd spend however long it took proving that to her. The week after Julian's confession was the longest of Tamara's life. He stopped coming by the bakery, sending his assistant instead with business documents that needed signing. At home, he made sure they were never there at the same time, though she could tell from the coffee cups in the sink that he was still living in the penthouse. This is ridiculous, Kenya said one morning, watching her sister obsessively reorganize the display case for the 3rd time. Just talk to him. And say what? Tamara slammed a tray of croissants down harder than necessary. Sorry I didn't say I love you back when you confessed your feelings in the middle of our fake marriage. Well, do you love him? Before Tamara could answer, the bakery's front door chimed. Charlotte walked in, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than Tamara's first car. We need to talk, Charlotte announced, ignoring the line of customers. Privately, Tamara looked at Kenya, who nodded. I've got this. Use my office. It's smaller than yours, but at least it's private. Once they were alone, Charlotte removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes red from crying. Julian's selling the company. What? Tamara sat down hard. That's impossible. He's in talks with Michael Chen's group. They've wanted to buy him out for years. Charlotte's perfectly manicured hands twisted in her lap. He's walking away from everything he built, and it's all your fault. My fault? How is this my fault? Because he's in love with you, you stupid woman. Charlotte stood up, pacing the tiny office. The Julian I knew would never give up control of his company, but now he's talking about fresh starts and what really matters in life. He's throwing away 20 years of work to prove something to you. Tamara felt like she couldn't breathe. I never asked him to do that. No, but you made him fall in love with you. Real love, not the shallow thing we had. Charlotte's voice broke. Do you know what that's like? To realize your ex-husband never looked at you the way he looks at his fake wife. Charlotte, save it. I didn't come here for your pity. Charlotte put her sunglasses back on. I came because despite everything, I still care about that company. Talk to him. Stop him from making the biggest mistake of his life. After Charlotte left, Tamara called Julian's office. His assistant said he was in meetings all day. She tried his cell phone, straight to voicemail. Coward, she muttered, grabbing her purse. Kenya, I need to go out for a while. She took a taxi to Julian's office building, bypassing security with her wife credentials. His assistant tried to stop her, but Tamara pushed past into his office. Julian was standing at the window, just like the day they'd first met. But instead of plotting revenge, he was signing away his life's work. Are you insane? Tamara demanded. He turned, surprised. You shouldn't be here. I'm in the middle of throwing away your company. Yeah, I heard. She crossed her arms. Why? Because it doesn't matter anymore. He set down his pen. None of it matters if what? If you can't have me. Tamara felt anger rising. That's not fair, Julian. You can't put that on me. I'm not. He sat heavily in his chair. I'm doing this for me. Being with you. It made me realize what I'd become. This company, the money, the power. It was all about proving something to my father, to Charlotte, to myself. And now, I want to build something real. He looked at her, his eyes tired but determined. Something that matters, like what you've built. Your bakery isn't just about making money. It's about community, about making people happy, about teaching kids to cook. Tamara felt her anger softening. You can do that without selling your company. Can I? This place is full of ghosts, Tamara. Every room reminds me of deals I made, people I stepped on, the person I used to be. He stood up, moving closer to her. The person who thought it was okay to marry someone for revenge. Julian, let me finish, please. He took her hands in his. I love you. Not because you're different from Charlotte, not because you shake up my world, but because you make me want to be better. And that means letting go of the things that tied me to my old life. Tamara looked down at their joined hands. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Of this being real, of letting myself love you back, and then losing everything. Julian lifted her chin with one finger. You won't lose anything. The investment in your bakery, the expansion plans, they're all legally yours now. I made sure of that before I started the sale negotiations. I don't care about that. Tamara pulled away in frustration. I care about you, you idiot. I care about the man who brings me coffee every morning, who listens to my dreams about teaching kids to bake, who looks at me like you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Julian stepped closer. Like you're brilliant and strong and absolutely terrifying because of how much I love you. Stop saying that. Why? It's true. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Tamara Price, and I'll keep saying it until you believe me. I do believe you, she whispered. That's what scares me. Why? Because I love you too. The words came out in a rush, and it wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be business. Julian's face lit up with the most genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. Say it again. What? That this was supposed to be business? No, the other part. Tamara felt herself smiling despite her fears. I love you, Julian Hartley, even though you're crazy enough to sell your company without talking to me first. I love you too. He leaned his forehead against hers. Even though you're stubborn enough to make me say it first. So what do we do now? Now? Julian pulled back, his eyes twinkling. Now I think we should get married. Tamara laughed. We are married. No, I mean really married. Not for revenge or business or any reason, except that I love you and you love me. He got down on one knee, still holding her hands. Tamara Price, will you marry me? Again for real this time? Before she could answer, his assistant burst in. Mr. Hartley, the Chen Group's lawyers are here with the final contracts. Julian looked up at Tamara, waiting. She thought about everything that had brought them here. A revenge plot, a business deal, an unexpected love that had changed them both. Get up, she said finally. Is that a no? It's a get up and tell those lawyers to go home. She pulled him to his feet. You're not selling your company. Tamara, no. Listen to me. You want to build something real? Something that matters? Then let's do it together. Your business skills, my vision for community outreach, we could do amazing things. Julian stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his assistant. Tell the Chen Group I've reconsidered. And get my PR team up here. I want to announce a new charitable foundation focused on culinary education in underserved communities. After his assistant left, Julian turned back to Tamara. You still haven't answered my question. Yes, she said softly. Yes, I'll marry you again. For real this time. He pulled her into a kiss that felt like a beginning. When they finally broke apart, Tamara laughed. What's so funny? I was just thinking we should get Charlotte to cater the wedding. Julian groaned. Your sense of humor is going to be the death of me. But you love me anyway. Yes, he said, pulling her close again. I really, really do. News of Julian and Tamara's plans for a real wedding spread through New York society like wildfire. The morning after their mutual declarations of love, Page 6 ran the headline, Sweet Success, Hartley Power Couple to Renew Vows. You'd think they'd have bigger news to cover, Tamara said, reading the article on her tablet while Julian made breakfast. They were in his penthouse kitchen, now their kitchen, enjoying their first peaceful morning as a genuinely engaged couple. Are you kidding? This is huge news. Julian flipped a pancake with surprising skill. The bad boy of Manhattan business and the baker who tamed him. They love it. Is that what happened? I tamed you? Tamara stole a piece of bacon from the plate beside him. You changed me, Julian said seriously, for the better. Before Tamara could respond, both their phones started buzzing. The news had reached their families. My mother's crying, Julian reported, reading his messages. Happy tears, she says. She always thought Charlotte was wrong for me. My dad wants to know if you can handle a Price family barbecue, Tamara laughed. Then her face fell as she read another message. And Charlotte's lawyers want a meeting. Julian put down his phone. Whatever she's planning, we face it together. Tamara finished. She stood up and wrapped her arms around him from behind. No more hiding from hard conversations, remember. The meeting was set for that afternoon. They arrived at Charlotte's lawyer's office hand in hand, ready for whatever she might throw at them. Charlotte was already there, along with two sharp-looking attorneys. "Thank you for coming," she said formally. "There's something you need to see." One of the lawyers slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Julian and Tamara at City Hall during their first wedding, meeting with his lawyers to sign the business agreement. Everything that proved their marriage had started as a business arrangement. "Where did you get these?" Julian demanded. "Does it matter?" Charlotte smiled thinly. "What matters is what I plan to do with them." Tamara leaned forward. "And what's that, Charlotte? Release them to the press? Try to humiliate us?" "Actually," Charlotte's smile widened, "I thought I'd use them in my new book." "Your what?" Julian and Tamara said together. "My tell-all memoir, about marriage and divorce among New York's elite." Charlotte pulled out a contract. "Simon & Schuster is very interested, especially in the chapter about how my ex-husband's revenge marriage turned into a real love story." Tamara felt Julian tense beside her. "You're trying to profit from our relationship? Why not? You two certainly have." Charlotte gestured to a newspaper on the table, featuring an article about Sweet Success Bakery's expanding empire. "But I'm willing to make a deal." "Of course you are," Julian said tiredly. "What do you want?" "A partnership." Charlotte sat back. "Your new charitable foundation for culinary education? I want to be part of it, not just as a donor, as a board member, with real input." Tamara stared at her. "Why?" "Because, believe it or not, I've done some thinking since your little speech at my anniversary party." Charlotte's composed facade cracked slightly. "You were right about all of it. The way we judge people, the shallow values. I want to do something meaningful for once in my life." Julian looked skeptical. "And we're supposed to believe you've had this great moral awakening?" "Believe what you want, but think about it. Who better to convince wealthy donors to support culinary education in underprivileged communities than someone who speaks their language?" Charlotte stood up. "Take a few days to decide, but remember, my publisher needs an answer by Friday." After she left, Tamara and Julian sat in silence for a moment. "She's manipulating us," Julian said finally. "Obviously." Tamara picked up one of the photos. It showed them at City Hall keeping careful distance between them, even as they said their vows. "But she's also right about one thing. She does know how to work with those society people, and we need their donations to make the foundation work. So we give in to blackmail?" "No." Tamara took his hand. "We take control of the narrative. We announce everything ourselves, how we met, how our business arrangement turned into love, all of it. We tell our story before she can twist it." Julian looked at her in amazement. "You do that, let everyone know the truth? The truth is that I love you. Everything else is just details." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, it might help other people. Show them that real love doesn't care about society's rules." That night they called a press conference. Standing together at the podium, they told their story. All of it. The revenge plot, the business deal, and the unexpected love that had grown between them. "We didn't start this relationship in the most conventional way," Tamara admitted to the crowd of reporters. "But sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places. The only thing I regret," Julian added, "is that I didn't fall in love with her sooner." The response was overwhelming. Social media exploded with support, and Love Wins and Millionaire's Sweet Success trended nationwide. Their story resonated with people who'd felt judged by society's standards, who'd found love in unexpected places. Later that night, as they lay in bed together, Julian's phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte. "Well played," it read. "I still want in on the foundation, but this time I'm asking nicely." Tamara read the message over his shoulder. "What do you think?" "I think," Julian turned to face her, "I think that if you and I could go from a fake marriage to real love, maybe Charlotte can go from society snob to actual human being." "Look who's becoming an optimist," Tamara teased. "You did that." He pulled her close. "You made me believe in second chances." "Speaking of second chances," Tamara propped herself up on an elbow, "we need to talk about the wedding, the real one, whatever you want. Money's no object." "Actually," Tamara smiled, "I was thinking something small, just family and close friends. At my bakery." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Not the Plaza Hotel, not the society wedding of the year. We did the big society thing with our first wedding. This time, I want it to be real. Just us, being ourselves. Julian kissed her softly. Have I told you lately that I love you? Yes, but I don't mind hearing it again. As they drifted off to sleep, Tamara thought about how far they'd come. From a business arrangement to real love. From revenge to redemption. It wasn't the way most love stories started, but maybe that's what made it special. Their phones kept buzzing with messages, congratulations, interview requests, even a few wedding proposals from reality TV shows. But they ignored them all, content in their own little bubble of truth and love. Tomorrow they would deal with Charlotte's foundation proposal, wedding plans, and whatever else life threw at them. But for now they had everything they needed. Each other, and the knowledge that sometimes the best kind of love is the kind that catches you completely by surprise. You want to have the wedding where? Julian's mother, Eleanor Hartley, set down her teacup with a gentle clink. They were having Sunday brunch at her Connecticut estate, breaking the news about their wedding plans. At my bakery, Tamara repeated firmly. The Brooklyn Heights location has that beautiful garden space in back. We're thinking sunset ceremony, intimate reception. Eleanor looked at her son. Julian, darling, be reasonable. The Hartleys have had their weddings at St. Patrick's Cathedral for 3 generations. Maybe it's time for a change, Mother. Julian took Tamara's hand under the table. We want something real, not a society spectacle. But what will people say? They're already talking, Tamara pointed out. At least this way, they'll be talking about something genuine. Eleanor sighed, studying Tamara with new eyes. You know, when Julian first told me about your arrangement, I thought he'd lost his mind. Another revenge scheme against Charlotte. Mother, let me finish. Eleanor stood up and walked to a nearby cabinet. But then I saw how he changed. He smiled more, called more often, started talking about things beyond business deals and stock prices. She pulled out an old photo album. He reminded me of his father, before success made him hard. Tamara felt Julian tense beside her at the mention of his late father. Eleanor brought the album to the table and opened it. William was like Julian when we first met. Driven, ambitious, always trying to prove himself. But he never lost his heart the way Julian did. Never found someone to remind him what really matters. She pushed the album toward them. Which is why I want you to have this. The photo showed a young Eleanor in a simple white dress, standing in what looked like a backyard. Our first wedding, Eleanor explained. Before William made his fortune, before the Hartley name meant anything in New York, we got married in his parents' garden because that's all we could afford. She smiled at Tamara. It was perfect. Mother, are you saying? I'm saying have your bakery wedding, be happy, be in love. Eleanor reached across the table and took Tamara's other hand. And wear this. She slipped off her engagement ring, a stunning vintage piece with a blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds. I can't, Tamara protested. That's a family heirloom. Exactly. And your family now. Eleanor pressed the ring into her hand. William gave this to me in that garden. It's seen one true love story. It deserves to see another. The drive back to the city was quiet, both of them processing what had happened. Tamara kept looking at the sapphire ring, now sitting beside Julian's original diamond on her finger. Your mother surprised me, she finally said. She surprised both of us. Julian smiled. But she's right. You are family now. They were almost home when Julian's phone rang. It was Kenya. You need to come to the bakery, she said without preamble. Dad showed up. Tamara grabbed the phone. Daddy's there. He's supposed to be in Atlanta. Well, he's here now. And he's got questions about this wedding. They found Thomas Price in Tamara's office, looking at the framed magazine covers featuring his daughter. At 65, he was still an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered, with the same confident bearing Tamara had inherited. Baby girl, he hugged Tamara tight, then turned to Julian with a stern expression. So, you're the man who married my daughter for revenge. Daddy, no, he needs to hear this. Thomas stepped closer to Julian. I've been watching you two in the news, saw how you handled that Charlotte woman, how you supported my girl's dreams, but I need to know, are you really in this for the long haul? Julian met his gaze steadily. Sir, I love your daughter, more than I ever thought possible. What started as a business deal became the best thing that ever happened to me. Pretty words. Thomas crossed his arms. But I'm a simple man. I believe in actions. So tell me, what are you going to do to prove it? Actually, Julian smiled, I have some ideas about that. Over the next hour, Julian laid out his plans. The charitable foundation would partner with community colleges to offer culinary scholarships. Sweet Success would start an apprenticeship program for young bakers, from underprivileged backgrounds, and every new location would include a teaching kitchen for community classes. Tamara's vision, Julian explained, but with the resources to make it happen on a large scale. Thomas listened quietly, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to his daughter. "This what you want, baby girl? This life? This man?" Tamara took Julian's hand. "More than anything." "Well then," Thomas broke into a wide smile, "I guess I better start planning my father of the bride speech." The relief in the room was palpable. Kenya, who'd been watching from the doorway, came in with champagne. "To family," Thomas proposed, raising his glass. "To family," they all echoed. Later that night, Tamara found Julian on their penthouse balcony, looking at the city lights. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking about family," he said, pulling her close. "How I spent so many years focusing on business, on revenge, on proving myself, when all I really needed was this." "Your mother's ring?" Tamara held up her hand, watching the sapphire catch the light. "She said it's seen one true love story, and now it'll see another." Julian turned her to face him. "I know we're already married. I know we're planning our second wedding, but—" He got down on one knee, taking her hand. "Tamara Price, will you build a family with me?" Tamara felt tears in her eyes. "We already are a family. You, me, Kenya, your mother, my father, even Charlotte in her own complicated way. Is that a yes?" She pulled him up and kissed him. "That's a yes. Although I have one condition." "Name it." "When we have kids, we're not sending them to those fancy private schools you went to. I want them to know the real world like we do." Julian went still. "Kids? Well, yeah. Eventually." Tamara suddenly felt uncertain. "Unless you don't—" "No, I mean, yes, I mean—" Julian laughed, spinning her around. "I want everything with you. Kids, family, a life where business deals don't come before bedtime stories." "Good." Tamara snuggled into his arms. "Because I have a feeling our kids are going to be amazing bakers. With a dash of business sense," Julian added. "And hopefully none of their father's revenge tendencies." "Hey!" But Julian was laughing. Although I have to say that particular revenge plot worked out pretty well. Tamara looked up at him, at this man who had started as a business partner and become her whole world. "Yeah," she said softly, "it really did." Inside, their phones were probably buzzing with wedding details, business matters, and foundation plans. But out here under the stars, they were just Tamara and Julian, two people who had found love in the most unexpected place and were building a family one day at a time. The week before their second wedding was chaos in the best possible way. Sweet success. Bakery's Brooklyn Heights location had been transformed into a magical space, with fairy lights twinkling in the garden and the scent of fresh flowers mixing with baking bread. "You're crazy to try to handle the wedding cake yourself," Kenya told Tamara, watching her sister work on a 4-tier masterpiece. Each layer represented a different phase of their relationship, from bitter chocolate representing their revenge plot to sweet vanilla for their growing love. "It has to be perfect," Tamara insisted, piping delicate sugar flowers. "This isn't just any wedding cake, this is our real story in sugar and flour." "Everything's going to be perfect," Eleanor Hartley said, entering the kitchen with a garment bag. "Especially once you see this." Inside the bag was a dress that made Tamara gasp. Simple, elegant, with delicate lace that would hug her curves perfectly. "I had it made based on my garden wedding dress," Eleanor explained. "But with your style, your flair, a perfect blend of Hartley tradition and Price originality." Tamara hugged her future mother-in-law, careful not to get flour on the dress. "It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as you'll be in it." Eleanor wiped away a tear. "Now where's that son of mine? He's supposed to be handling the foundation announcement." The Hartley Price Culinary Education Foundation was set to launch the same day as their wedding, Julian's idea of perfect timing. They'd decided to make Charlotte a senior advisor rather than a board member, focusing her society connections into fundraising rather than program decisions. "He's in meetings downtown," Kenya reported. "Something about a surprise for Tamara." "Another surprise?" Tamara laughed. "What's he planning now?" The answer came later that evening, when Julian arrived at the bakery with a thick folder and a huge grin. "Close your eyes," he instructed Tamara. "Julian, I'm in the middle of sugar flowers. Trust me." Sighing, she closed her eyes. She heard paper rustling, then Julian's excited voice. "Okay, look." She opened her eyes to see blueprints spread across her work table. "What am I looking at?" "Your dream." Julian pointed to the plans. "A full culinary school right here in Brooklyn, with state-of-the-art teaching kitchens, community spaces, and a restaurant run entirely by students. Tamara stared at the plans, her heart racing. How did you... Remember that night you couldn't sleep? You told me about your dream of creating a place where anyone could learn to cook, regardless of their background. Julian wrapped his arms around her from behind. I've been working on this ever since. But this would cost millions. Already funded. Charlotte might have surprised us all. She convinced half her society friends to donate. Turns out revenge isn't the only thing that can change people. Tamara turned in his arms, tears in her eyes. You did all this for me? For us? For our future family? Julian wiped away her tears. This is just the beginning, sweetheart. We're going to change lives together. The moment was interrupted by Thomas Price clearing his throat from the doorway. Sorry to break this up, but we've got a situation out front. They followed him to find a small crowd gathered outside the bakery. At first, Tamara thought it was reporters. They'd been dealing with press attention all week, but then she recognized faces from the neighborhood, the young couple whose wedding cake she'd done, families who'd attended her cooking classes, local business owners who'd supported her from the start. What's going on? She asked. An elderly woman stepped forward, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd been one of her first customers. We heard about your wedding, about how you're keeping it small, intimate, and we wanted to contribute. One by one, people came forward with offerings, homemade dishes representing their various cultures, handcrafted decorations, musicians offering to play, children with handmade cards. You've given so much to this community, Mrs. Rodriguez explained. Not just with your bakery, but with your classes, your kindness, your way of making everyone feel welcome. We wanted to give something back. Tamara was openly crying now. Julian held her close, his own eyes suspiciously bright. See, he whispered, this is why I fell in love with you. You don't just build businesses, you build communities. Later that night, after accepting countless dishes and heartfelt wishes, they sat in the garden where they would soon be married. Having second thoughts about that society wedding, Tamara teased. Are you kidding? This is better than any cathedral ceremony could ever be. Julian looked around at the twinkling lights, the homemade decorations, the genuine love that surrounded them. This is real. You know, Tamara said thoughtfully, when we first made our deal, I thought you were just another rich guy playing games, using people for your own ends. I was, Julian admitted, until you showed me a better way to live. And I thought I was just using you for business expansion, she smiled. Life's funny sometimes. Speaking of funny, Julian pulled out his phone. Charlotte sent a text, says she's bringing a date to the wedding. Really? Who? James Chen, Michael Chen's brother, from your biggest competitor. Tamara laughed. Well, that's an interesting development. Apparently they bonded over being collateral damage in our love story. Julian shrugged. Maybe they'll have their own revenge marriage that turns real. Look at you playing matchmaker now. Hey, it worked out pretty well for me. He pulled her close. Best business deal I ever made. The garden was peaceful in the growing darkness. Tomorrow would be full of last-minute wedding preparations, foundation announcements, and family chaos. But tonight was just for them. I love you, Tamara said softly. Not the businessman, not the society figure, just you. And I love you. The baker, the dreamer, the woman who changed my whole world. Julian kissed her gently. Although I have to admit, your maple bacon cupcakes didn't hurt. Tamara laughed and snuggled closer. Above them, stars twinkled like the fairy lights in the trees. From the kitchen came the comforting sense of baking and spices. Everything was perfect, but not in the polished society page way they'd once aimed for. Perfect in its realness, its warmth, its love. Tomorrow they would start their new chapter officially. But in many ways, their real story had started long ago, with a business deal that turned into love, with revenge that turned into redemption, with two people who found exactly what they needed in the last place they expected to look. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Tamara stood in her office-turned-bridal suite, looking at herself in a full-length mirror Eleanor had insisted on installing. The dress was perfect, simple, elegant, and completely her. Kenya was fussing with the veil while Eleanor adjusted the train. You look beautiful, baby girl, Thomas Price said from the doorway. He was handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes suspiciously moist. Don't cry, Daddy, Tamara warned, because if you cry, I'll cry, and Kenya spent an hour on this makeup. Can't help it. Thomas came into the room. I keep thinking about that little girl who used to stand on a chair to help her mama bake cookies. Now look at you, successful businesswoman about to run a foundation, marrying for love. Speaking of the foundation, Eleanor checked her phone. The press release just went out. The response is overwhelming. We've already received 3 major donation pledges. Kenya peeked out the window. The garden is packed. I think the whole neighborhood showed up. Good, Tamara smiled. That's exactly what we wanted. Meanwhile, in Julian's makeshift groom's room, formerly the bakery's storage space, he was dealing with his own pre-wedding jitters. Your tie is fine, James Chen said, watching Julian adjust it for the 10th time. Stop fidgeting. I can't help it. Julian looked in the mirror again. This has to be perfect. Tamara deserves perfect. Darling, relax. Charlotte walked in, stunning in a pale blue dress. Everything is perfect. The garden looks like a fairy tale. The press is being kept at a respectable distance, and your bride is absolutely glowing. Julian turned to his ex-wife, still amazed at how much had changed. Thank you, Charlotte, for everything. Don't get sentimental on me now. But she smiled warmly. Just be happy. That's all any of us really want in the end. The ceremony was set for sunset. Guests filled the garden, a unique mix of society figures and local community members. The teaching kitchen students Tamara had mentored served appetizers they'd made themselves. Local musicians played softly. Julian stood under an arch of flowers, his heart pounding. This wasn't his first wedding to Tamara, but it felt like the only one that mattered. Everything before had been leading to this moment. The music changed, the crowd stood, and then Tamara appeared on her father's arm, and Julian forgot how to breathe. She was radiant. The setting sun caught the sapphire on her finger, making it glow like her eyes. But it was her smile that stopped his heart. Pure joy, pure love, pure Tamara. Their vows were simple, but profound. Julian, Tamara's voice was clear and strong. You came into my life as a business proposition and somehow became my everything. You saw me, really saw me, when others looked past. You supported my dreams, then helped make them bigger. I promise to love you, challenge you, and bake you maple bacon cupcakes for the rest of our lives. Julian's hands shook as he held hers. Tamara, you turned my world upside down in the best possible way. You made me want to be better, to do better, to love better. What started as revenge became redemption thanks to you. I promise to love you, support you, and never take a single moment with you for granted. The reception that followed was unlike anything New York society had ever seen. Society ladies ate soul food next to local shop owners. Children ran between tables, stealing cookies from elaborate dessert displays. Charlotte and James Chen danced to music played by a neighborhood jazz band. Look at all this, Kenya said, joining the newlyweds at their table. Who would have thought your crazy revenge plan would lead to this? Sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places, Eleanor added, sitting down with Thomas. Just like your father and I all those years ago in that garden. Speaking of unexpected, Charlotte approached their table. I hate to talk business at your wedding, but the foundation just got another major donation from Michael Chen's company. Julian raised an eyebrow at James, who shrugged. My brother knows a good investment when he sees one. As the night went on, Tamara and Julian snuck away to the bakery kitchen, their special place where everything had started. Happy? Julian asked, holding her close. Perfect, Tamara replied. Then she grinned. Although, what? I did add a special touch to our wedding cake. Top tier has a hint of revenge in it. Extra bitter chocolate, just to remember where we started. Julian laughed and kissed her. I love you, Mrs. Hartley. I love you too, Mr. Price Hartley. His eyes widened. Really? You want to combine our names? Why not? It's a new era, after all. She pulled him toward the door. Now come on, we have a cake to cut. They rejoined their guests in the garden, now lit by hundreds of twinkling lights. The cake was a masterpiece, 4 tiers of their story told in sugar and flour. As they cut into it together, cheers and applause filled the air. To the happy couple, Thomas raised his glass. May their life be as sweet as their success. Later, as they danced under the stars, Tamara rested her head on Julian's shoulder. You know what I just realized? What's that, sweetheart? We never actually signed those divorce papers from our first marriage. Technically, we just renewed vows we never planned to break. Julian pulled back to look at her. Does that bother you? No. She smiled up at him. I think some part of me knew even then that you were it for me. Even if you were being a revenge-obsessed idiot at the time. Hey! But he was laughing. I prefer to think of it as fate. The universe knew what we needed, even if we didn't. Around them, their unlikely family celebrated. Kenya was teaching Eleanor to dance to hip-hop. Thomas was deep in conversation with James about expansion plans for the culinary school. Charlotte was charming a group of local business owners. Her society Polish turned to good use at last. "Look at what we built," Tamara said softly. "Not just the bakery or the foundation, but this family, this love. And we're just getting started," Julian promised. "Just wait until you see what's next. More bakeries, more schools, more everything." He twirled her under the lights. More love, more dreams, more life, together. As the evening wound down, guests began to leave, carrying boxes of wedding cake and hearts full of joy. The neighborhood children had fallen asleep under tables, dreaming perhaps of their own futures in the culinary school. The musicians played one last slow song. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Price Hartley?" Julian asked. "I am home," Tamara replied simply, "right here with you." They shared one last dance in their garden, under their lights, surrounded by the sweet smell of success. Their story hadn't started like a fairy tale, but it had become something better, something real, something true, something that proved love could bloom in the most unexpected places. And in the end, that was the sweetest success of all, the end.